Sports City, Chefs, Sports City, Chefs. Yeah. Cavi, Taj.
Welcome to the lunch break. Although this lunch break will be posted at, I'm sure, a time that might not be for lunch, but listen, we're adaptable here. I just want to welcome everybody to joining us after the New York Jets have fallen to 0-2, thus breaking my heart and really making me wonder why it is that I watch football. But fortunately, there's always somebody doing a little bit worse than you, and right now, thankfully, that's the Jaguars, the team who took the Jets for that number 1 overall pick after it seemed like we were destined to get Trevor Lawrence. But it doesn't look like either Trevor Lawrence or Zach Wilson is really doing terribly spectacular. Anybody who paid attention to this past week saw that the Jets' rookie quarterback threw 4 interceptions and led the Jets to a 25-6 loss. Now, in that 25-6 loss, the Jets only gave up 2 touchdowns and 4 field goals. Now, mind you, those there was 1 touchdown and 2 field goals per half, if I remember that correctly. But, you know, it was one of those games where you really hope a lot is taken away from a learning perspective, and you don't expect the film really to be used a lot. You know, Robert Saleh in the offseason, right before this year got started, had said he's not really an X and O's kind of coach. He's more, I think, of an athleticism-based coach. And it certainly seemed to me in this game he got out-schemed. And that's okay. I just want to think that that's okay, that these first couple of games are more for him to understand the rhythm and the pace of being a head coach, getting his players used to his systems, the routine. You know, you'll so often hear about coaches and players and staff and everybody in the game of football being such creatures of habit to a point where Monday night games, you remember famously for Kirk Cousins, not very good night, time player. Guys don't really like playing in the Thursday game specifically because it throws them off their routine. And the Jets are right now a young team trying to figure out that routine, again, similar to the Jaguars. One thing I did find interesting, though, when I was looking at some of the advanced stats and even some of the not so advanced stats, is right now, in terms of completion percentage, the Jets and the Jaguars are at the bottom. But I always like to just take a quick look and see what the other side is. And right now, the Browns have completed 40 of their 49 pass attempts, which is incredibly efficient, albeit for not a lot of pass attempts. And again, it's such a small sample size right now. But in the air, the Raiders are far and away the team chucking the ball downfield, followed by the Cardinals and the Chiefs. And Kyler Murray right now is really emerging as one of the true stars in the game. And I think last year when you looked at the Cardinals, you were able to see that it was one of those years like what the Jets are doing right now, where it's a feel it out kind of year, and then you come out next year and say, okay, I know the drill, let's do our thing. So it was a very interesting week 2. Just a couple of quick observations on the games. Last week, a week ago today, as of this recording, the Giants fell to Washington in what was a fantastic game. You saw Joe Burrow throw for 200 yards against the Chicago Bears. Now, interesting in that game was Justin Fields came in for the Bears, and as of right now, it seems like he's going to be the guy. It definitely rings like Andy Dalton's injury gave the Bears that out that they wanted to put Justin Fields in maybe a little bit earlier than they wanted to. I think teams nowadays, they understand that you got to get the young quarterbacks in there sooner and just go through what's called growing pains and hope maybe they'll have a Justin Fields-like acceleration or fit right into the league, but that's not to be expected. And speaking of unexpected quarterback situations, you have Mills now the signal caller in Houston after their quarterback goes down with an injury against Baker Mayfield and the Browns, who beat the Texans 31-21. And you had the Rams and the Colts in a fantastic game as Matt Stafford tossed 278 yards to beat the Colts 27-24. The only shutout of the week was the Bills going to Miami, shutting out Miami 35-0. But a large part of the problem there was that Tua, Miami's signal caller, was knocked out of the game. We already recapped the Jets and the Patriots, so let's not think about that again. And the 49ers and the Eagles really saw another performance where Jalen Hurts seems like he'll be one of those quarterbacks who never really throws for 300 or 400 yards that often, but what he will do is add another 50 to 100 yards in the ground. He added 82 against San Francisco. Not quite enough to beat them, San Francisco winning that game 17-11, but really encouraging game, I think, for Jalen Hurts and his ascendance into stardom. Speaking of ascendance into stardom, now we're getting into some of these games with some big passing numbers. Is Derek Carr lit up the Pittsburgh Steelers defense for 382 yards. Najee Harris only ran for 38 yards, but those two guys combined were able to do what needed to be done to beat to beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. And by the way, Henry Ruggs III had a nice, huge catch in there, putting him over 100 yards, finishing a total of 113. Sam Darnold threw for 305 yards, with CMC adding 72 on the ground as New Orleans falls yet again. Denver smoked Jacksonville 23-13, but that score not indicative of how it really went. And then Kyler Murray, as I mentioned before, threw for 400 yards, beating Minnesota by a point. Matt Ryan threw for 300 yards in a loss against Tampa Bay, as Tampa Bay just methodically took down Atlanta. That was just every part about that game was fantastic. Dak Prescott and team took down the Chargers 20-17, and Seattle and Tennessee played a very back and forth game towards the end. I mean, really, it felt like Seattle was winning the game the whole way, but then Derrick Henry just imposed his will, put 182 yards on the ground to win that game, despite 178 yards receiving from Tyler Lockett, but Tennessee goes on to win. And then the night game last Sunday was Baltimore and Kansas City, which has just become an absolute show. It feels like every time it goes on. Baltimore this time wins, featuring a jump pass from Lamar Jackson. But another really good performance by those two. And then the Monday night game was the stinker, where Green Bay pretty much took control against Detroit the whole time. That was week 2. But now, I just want to take a couple quick moments to look ahead to week 3. There are a few good matchups on this slate. Your Thursday night game tonight, Carolina against Houston, you just sort of wonder, okay, let's see how Sam Darnold does again against another team. Is Carolina for real? I mean, Darnold does have good weapons with CMC and Robbie Anderson, his old friend back there. The game is in Houston. A team that just really doesn't seem like they know what they're doing, and a franchise that doesn't seem like they know what they're doing, or they do know what they're doing. They're just confidently incorrect in their methodology, from trying to get out from bad Bill O'Brien trades to having a quarterback who just doesn't want to be there, and yet a franchise who understandably won't take anything cheap for him and wants to get some value, so they're just paying him to do nothing. The other games coming up this weekend, Washington at Buffalo. I'm fully expecting Buffalo to come away from that matchup with a win. You've got Chicago and Justin Fields going to Cleveland, and one of those, I cannot believe I'm saying it, but I just expect Cleveland to run away with that one. I always think when rookie quarterbacks make early starts in their careers, it could go their favor, simply because there's just not a lot of film on those guys. But right now, I'm showing the Bears as a 7-point favorite. I'm sorry, the Browns as a 7-point favorite, which sounds appropriate. Then you also have Baltimore going to Detroit. Now, Detroit, as we know, not a very good team, and Baltimore is one of those great teams. Lamar Jackson seems to have had a hip issue and wasn't in practice either today and yesterday. And that's a bit of an issue, but it's the Lions. Head coach Dan Campbell still putting everything together. I'm starting to like what he's doing out in Detroit, but it's got to translate to wins. As a Jet fan, I can certainly understand, hey, his head coach is great, new, shiny, but what will it mean if you're continuously losing? Colts versus the Titans takes place in Tennessee this weekend. Titans are 5-point favorites. And after that performance they put against the Seahawks, or generally a team that gets off to a really hot start, was a great win for them. And the Colts are, I think, kind of healthying themselves up to get into the season, but I do expect the Titans to win that matchup. I don't know about easily. I really like Frank Reich as the guy calling a lot of the shots over there in Indianapolis, but Titans should win that one. You also have what I think has the potential to be a good game, despite the 6.5-point spread, when the Chargers go to Kansas City. Kansas City, big heavy favorites, but Justin Herbert, I don't know if we can count him as the guy who will let his team fall out of it quickly. There's some quarterbacks that if the team starts to lose, they'll just kind of call it a day and move on to the next one. But we don't know what Justin Herbert's personality is like in those types of games, and he could just be one of those guys who, if you're down by 2 scores with the minute and a half to go, he'll get you another touchdown just for the attempt at the onside kick and the W. But that's why I think when you look at the spread, I don't trust taking Kansas City with such a big number. But I do expect Kansas City to win. You have the Saints and the Patriots, which sounds like a great game in, say, 2012. But it's 2021 now, and I think Bill Belichick has proven that he is still Bill Belichick. And don't get me wrong, Sean Payton is very good, and both of these guys now are coach. It's a Saints-Patriots game with neither Tom Brady nor Drew Brees, which just feels weird. But I think the game being in New England helps New England. The Saints have been dealing with a lot of the hurricane displacement situation going on down there, and that has to weigh on them. So I do agree with the Patriots being about a 3-point favorite there. When you look at Atlanta at the Giants, and what I like to think of as two chickens running into each other, hoping somebody gets the other past the other one. I'm just going to throw a dart and say the Giants, I think, are going to win this one. Daniel Jones, I think he's actually proven that he can put a team on his back, and we just don't know enough about the Falcons' offense. Calvin Ridley's good, Kyle Pitts has potential, but I don't know about that defense. You look at the Bengals going to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh should win that one handily. Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase are a great combo. But we need to see a little bit more out of the Bengals defense. And then we have Arizona going to Jacksonville. Arizona should just smoke Jacksonville, even though it's in Florida for that matchup. Jets facing Denver in what is the highest spread of the week. The Broncos favored by 10.5 against the Jets. Sure, whatever. I don't think the Jets are that bad. I really don't think they're 10.5 bad, but I'm sure I'll have my weekend ruined for me, as that is the first of the 4 o'clock games that I'll mention here. The other 4 o'clock games are Miami going to Vegas, and who knows how the Dolphins quarterback situation will play out. I believe Jacoby Brissett is the starter there versus the red-hot Derek Carr and the Raiders. So the Raiders should come away with that. Tampa Bay goes to Los Angeles to face the Rams, which actually a quite interesting game with Tom Brady facing Matt Stafford and the Rams. Tampa is favored by a point in that one, but I think that has the potential to be a very good close game. But in close games, you always got to go with Tom Brady. I think the Buccaneers are going to win that one. Seattle's going to win their matchup against Minnesota, if you ask me. Minnesota, I know they're going to be in their dome, but I think that dome is going to really help the way the Seahawks offense wants to run, with a lot of feet on the ground and maybe letting Russell Wilson pop it in the air. Tyler Lockett is looking like he is in top form right now. Seahawks should win that one. And then Green Bay against San Francisco. Green Bay is trying to prove that week 1 was just a fluke. 49ers have a very good defense. Good, I don't know about great anymore, but we'll see. I mean, the game in San Francisco, a Sunday nighter. I do think the Packers are going to prevail ultimately in that one. And then the Monday night game to wrap it up for the weekend will be Philly and Dallas in Dallas, with the Eagles a 4-point favorite. But I don't know, man. I think that game could go either way. Dak Prescott has so many weapons between CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper. But here's the thing. I do think that Jalen Hurts adds an interesting level to all of this. And I also think that Ezekiel Elliott has lost a little bit on his first step. Now, and I'm sorry, I should say that the Cowboys are favored by 4. I misspoke earlier. Of course, the Eagles are 4-point dogs, but I think it could be a closer game than that. I do think it seems like one of those games where both teams will just play each other close. And you know what? I'm going to go with an upset on Monday night. I think the Eagles are going to win that one, largely because I am a Jalen Hurts guy. So, a lot of interesting things that we've got going on right now. And I really look forward to what the Jets are going to do to improve against the Broncos. The Broncos are now 2-0, and they're the kind of team I think a lot of people saw it coming, right? You looked at Vegas in terms of biggest improvements and turnarounds, and I just really think that the Broncos have a lot of good things with Teddy Bridgewater at the helm. Melvin Gordon, absolutely suitably running back, especially for what they do. Cortland Sutton as a number 1 wide receiver, not great with Jerry Jeudy out, and I think that it will catch up to them. Noah Fant, solid tight end. And you look at that offensive line, nobody out there that blows you away, but they've got a lot of talent to get it done, especially against the Jets defense. And then you look at the defense for the Broncos. Von Miller's still there, and he's still a very good player. There's nobody else on the Broncos defense other than maybe Patrick Surtain to write home about. But, I just think the Jets are not quite there yet to be able to compete with a team like the Broncos. That's a really good situation for Denver. If you can come away from that matchup being 3-0, in the same division with the Raiders, who are just lighting it up, and the Chiefs, who are playing, I think every week you just expect them to play a Super Bowl caliber game. And then the Chargers, Justin Herbert, like I said, is going to keep you in everything. I think that's a really tough AFC West division, so a win for the Broncos would be huge for them, whereas if the Jets lose, they'll plummet to 0-3. And none of the AFC East teams are facing each other this week, which means that if Buffalo beats Washington, which I think is perfectly likely, and the Patriots beat New Orleans, again, perfectly possible, and Miami beating the Raiders, I don't know if I see that one, but it is, especially because it is in Vegas and Miami's got the quarterback issues. But either way, you're going to be behind the 8 ball. In the AFC East, you'll start to see the season slip away, and you hope to see some progress from the New York Jets. But it's been fun, everybody. I love breaking down the Jets, talking some football. Appreciate everybody. And feel free to check out everything else we have going on the Sports City Chefs Network. We've got some really fun, exciting things cooking up for you. Be sure to check out my weekly baseball show, which is live 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central. Make sure you go to www.sportscitychefs.com, and looking forward to doing a whole bunch of other stuff with you guys.
Sports City Chefs, Sports City Chefs, Chefs.